Hello everyone, I am Vipin Kamboj, a PhD student at Indian Institute of Science, Bengaluru. I am working in Professor Chinmoy Ranjan's lab. We are mainly focusing on CO2 electroreduction to fuel using solid oxide electrolyzer. To design efficient and cost-effective catalyst, we are investigating the mechanistic insight of CO2 electrolysis using Operando, Raman and mass spectroscopy. In the following presentation, I am going to give little more insight about our work.
Carbon dioxide to fuel can be achieved with high efficiency if we selectively converts the carbon dioxide to carbon monoxide by using renewable electricity and then convert them into synthetic fuel by using well-known Fischer-Tropsch reaction. Nowadays, the solid oxide devices has taken much more attention in this field because of their high energy efficiency above 90% and 100% selectivity towards CO formation. So in solid oxide device, the electrolyte is solid, which conducts the oxygen ions from one electrode to other electrode, and this conduction take place at pretty high temperature, around 800 degrees Celsius. So generally, the solid oxide devices are operated around 800 degrees Celsius. So at one side of the electrolyte, cathode catalyst is coated, and other side anode catalyst is coated. So for working of the cell, there should be a triple phase boundary, that means gas diffusion, electron transfer and ion transfer should take place simultaneously at the same surface. And to achieve this, the electrode should be porous for gas diffusion and it should be ionic as well as electronic conducting. You can see here in this blue circles, when CO2 gas diffused by help of electricity, it reduced to CO and generate oxygen ion, which is transferred by the ion conducting material from cathode to anode, where it get oxidized and generate the oxygen gas. So we are tracking the cathode surface to investigate the mechanistic inside the CO2 electrolysis. Nickel YSG electrode is conventionally used in solid oxide fuel cell as it's available commercially and its architecture is well established and it has been already tested for long-term stability around 40,000 hours. So keeping all these characteristics of nickel YSG in mind, this electrode is proposed for CO2 electrolysis. But when we use in pure CO2 stream, the electrode get breakdown. So to understand why the electrode get breakdown and to mitigate this problem, we infiltrate the nickel YSG electrode with the copper. And we found that on infiltration of copper, as we can see here, significantly reduced the cell over potential and it does not break down. So to understand that why the nickel YSG break down while nickel copper does not, we carried out Operando Raman studies. It's a two-chamber Raman cell. We are monitoring the Raman signal of cathode. This is the optical tracking Raman video during the reduction of the nickel copper electrode. As we can see here, initially it's golden in color. On introduction of hydrogen, the color is changed from golden to grey, along with the color change from black to brownish, which indicates the reduction of the catalyst in presence of hydrogen. Like this, we are tracking the cell optically as well as using Raman spectroscopy. We look into why the nickel YSG breakdown while nickel copper does not. We find by the Raman spectroscopy, we find that the oxide peak intensity of nickel oxide is maintained up to a current density of 0.2 amps. When we go beyond this current density, there is decay in the oxide signal. As we can see here, the CO production increases the red one up to 0.2 and then it starts decay. So it coincides with the decay in the oxide peak, which means the oxide is required to carry out the CO2 electrolysis. On the other hand, in case of nickel copper, as it's maintain the oxide and it carry out the CO2 electrolysis even at higher reducing bias. As we can see here, the CO signal increases with applying negative current density. So from this we can say the oxide is required to carry out the CO2 electrolysis. And by using temperature programmed activity study and theoretical study, we found that on doping of the copper in the nickel oxide lattice significantly improves the bond strength of nickel oxygen nickel bond, which helps to remain intact even under strong reducing bias. Now up to here we understand like oxide is required. Now why the oxide is required to carry out the CO2 electrolysis? When we look into the mechanistic insight, carbonate is the reaction intermediate of CO2 electrolysis. So for formation of the carbonate, there should be an surface oxygen where the CO2 get absorbed and form carbonate. So in second step, the cleavage of CO bond and formation of oxygen ion, and to trap this oxygen ion, there should be an oxygen vacancy so that it can be transferred to anode where it get oxidized. So in case of nickel and nickel copper, as it maintains this type of defective structure up to a current density of 0.24, so it carry out the CO2 electrolysis. While when we go beyond this current density, in case of nickel, it completely reduced to metallic. Now there is no sufficient surface oxygen to carry out the CO2 electrolysis. While in case of copper, it intact the structure as its oxide is more strongly bind, as the bond strength of nickel oxygen nickel bond is more on copper doping, which help to carry out the CO2 electrolysis even under strong reducing bias. So like this type of mechanistic studies we are carrying out by using Operando studies. Besides this, we are tracking the catalyst interface. As we can see here in this video, this is basically the catalyst interface. When we during the electrolysis, there's change in color from the interface. Initially it's bright gold. On applying negative current, the color is changing and the extent of color change is different when we go far from the interface. As we can see in this video initially, and the Raman spectra at different distance shows that the near the interface on applying negative current density, the catalyst get reduced. When we go far from the interface, like 70 micrometer far from the interface, the reduction would be less. When we go 120 micrometer, the extent of reduction would be very less and it's almost oxide. So such type of studies we are carrying out. Thank you for your kind attention.